Hey guys, my dad taped the OC finale. It was weird though. When I turned it on, it was like some odd avant-garde porn or something. Shit, hold on.
Show you the horses. You saw it. Show me. Did you see it in your head? She shows me things. Everyone will suffer. What do you want? Before you die, you see the ring. You see the ring. You see the ring. You see the ring.
We're going to expand our weekly video segment to take you into the back shelves of your local video store, back where it says horror videos, and where kids are devouring some awful films that we call the video nasties.
Are you freebasing? Inquiring minds want to know.
I have to break free from this culture of mechanical reproductions and the thick incrustations dying on the surface.
Fuck the prime time, bitch!
With the new fletch.
The pain, I can assure you, will be exquisite. As for our deaths, come with me and be immortal.
We have such sights to show you.
Gotta return some videotapes.
Hello, horror hounds, and welcome to the It Slays podcast. I'm your humble host, Rowan.
It's Xylia.
And I'm Dr. Nick Riviera, Mike.
And we are back. It is the year of our Lord, October 5th. We are getting into OCTHORRORFEST.
The year of our Lord, October 5th. That
didn't even make sense. It sounded good in my head, and then it just, as typical Rowan fashion, just ruined it.
Okay, to be fair, in 2021, a month feels like a goddamn year.
Yeah, that's true.
It's just too much.
The year of October 5th.
The year of October.
The month of October 5th, the month of the 5th of the year of October of the century of 2021. That's all I'm saying.
So, we are here. We are doing The Ring from a year I did not write down.
2002.
2002, geez. Rowan was high school in it.
I was in grade 7, so you would have been in grade 9.
Grade 9.
Yeah.
Great year.
I was a fetus.
Silence everywhere.
Crickets.
So yes, 2002, The Ring, directed by, he seems to have many names.
I think it's Gore Verbinski.
Gore Verbinski is what he goes by, but his real name is like Gregory, or I also saw Justin.
Greg Vino.
I have never heard him referred to as anything but Gore Verbinski.
Well, when I Wikipedia'd him, Gore is not his actual name. It's like his nickname.
Yeah, but that's what he's credited as.
Maybe his name's Gordon.
Gordon, maybe. Let's just spend the whole podcast trying to speculate. Anyway, yeah. So let's before we get into it, I do have a question. Okay. That was a good awkward transition. So, I want to know, has there ever in your younger years, I don't think it really counts now, has there ever been like a movie on cassette that's kind of like a cult classic or something that you weren't allowed to watch that you watched when you were younger that maybe your parents wouldn't want you to have seen or that maybe you shouldn't have seen young and that you watched with friends or yourself and hopefully you lived to tell the tale? And we'll start with Mike. Mike's raising his hand like we're in class.
Okay, I know you're expecting like some
movie.
scary movie.
Yeah.
Listen, my parents let me watch whatever I want from a very young age, or I guess let is probably not the correct term, but they resigned themselves to the fact that I was a very precociously, like, headstrong child in what I wanted to consume in terms of media. I read what books I wanted to read, I read what comics I wanted to read, I watched what TV I wanted to read, listened to whatever music I wanted to listen to, watched what movies I wanted to watch, and I would find a way to do it, and they couldn't do anything about it. So I think they just sort of resigned themselves. The one thing, so I watched, obviously, as we've talked about many times in this podcast, whatever horror movies and action movies and whatnot from a very young age. I had a TV in my bedroom. I watched cable all the time at all hours. I'd stay up. I'd put a towel at my bedroom door so they wouldn't see the light flashing from me having the TV on with no volume. The one thing I did watch on a video cassette when I was young the only thing that they would have had a problem with was a porno that one of my friends down the street lent me at a sleepover and I never gave back. I can't remember what it was called, but it was like the first porn I ever watched, and it was like, ugh. And it was cursed. So I'm pretty sure everybody that starred in that porn is now like dead or maimed in a ditch somewhere. So.
Jesus. How about you, Xylia?
Yeah, I'm the same. There was one movie for a period of time when I was in elementary. My parents didn't want me to see Saving Private Ryan. That's the only movie they've ever been like, no, I don't really want you to watch that. And I've seen bits and pieces and it's very boring. But yeah, same with me. The only movies that they really probably didn't want me to watch are porn.
That's reasonable. It seems like it's really going porn-centric.
Well,
So I actually have 4 answers for this.
Really? That's interesting.
So...
Oh my god, of course you do. You're like, I have not 1, not 3, but 7 answers for my own question right now.
Well, this is bizarre because yes, as I've talked about many times, my mother raised me on horror movies. So I mean, literally I could watch almost anything. It's really bizarre things that I wasn't allowed to watch. So number 1, and I feel for some reason I feel like we've talked about it before on the podcast, but the first one would be A Clockwork Orange. So my mom always told me that I had to wait till I was older to see it because I wouldn't appreciate it if I saw it so young. And of course...
okay, so she was talking from an art criticism perspective.
For that film. And obviously, so what do you do? Me and my friends, go rent it at a video store and watch it behind her back, of course. And I mean, I still love it to this day. So the second is a really kind of random one, which is my mom had a VHS copy of Excalibur. I don't know if anyone is familiar with that movie. It was
a cheesy
it's a medieval movie from the 90s.
Yeah.
And I just remember she always was like, You can't watch that. And I don't know why, but what I used to
Maybe it got taped over.
Well, what I used to do is she would, let's say she was at work or something.
Yeah.
And I would sneak into her bedroom and put it in the VCR and I'd play and I'd watch portions of it. And that's kind of how I saw it. And then if I heard her coming home, I'd put it back in where she kept her VHSs and run out of the room.
Don't you think she would know someone has played it?
Maybe she didn't watch that much. I don't even remember that movie, so I don't know how great that movie was. I said I had 4 examples, but I think I only have 3.
Okay,
So the other one was also Saving Private Ryan. I remember
my parents thought it was too realistic.
Yeah, I don't get it. My parents did the same thing where they're like, oh no, like, it's way too realistic and, like, disturbing.
Which is weird, because, like, we watch the news.
And yeah, I mean, we're never
period.
And we're, spoiler alert, because we're never gonna review Saving Private Ryan unless we're talking about the horror of how terrible of a movie it is.
It's just very boring.
It's terrible. There's like 8 million better war movies. Yeah, way better war movies than Saving Private Ryan. I hate that movie.
Thin Red Line, cough, cough, cough.
Yeah, Thin Red Line is like my all-time favorite war movie.
Casualties of War. I mean, like, literally, I could fart out a better war movie. Anyway.
Yeah, Pauly Shore in the army.
Oh, my
In the army now, yes. Hello, Lori Petty, like, this fucking legend. Saving Private Ryan didn't even have Lori Petty in it. What's the point?
I only really like war movies when they're, like, set in Vietnam.
So you're just, like, full-on, Full Metal Jacket, like,
oh, yeah.
Stan.
Yeah. 100%.
How could you not be?
I mean, listen, aside from the one, unfortunately, perpetuated in meme and song form racist moment from that movie, it is literally genius.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
So, yeah, that was my question. I thought it was fitting for this episode of Creepy Tapes.
Yeah, well, see, like, here's the thing. Some of us had parents that were, like, literally so out of touch with pop culture, they didn't know anything. All they ever do is listen to AM radio and watch the news and nature shows, and that was it. So, like, they didn't know what even was happening in the world, like, of culture to tell me what I could and couldn't watch. Like, again, it was like porn. We know porn's a thing, because, obviously they had consumed it, so they're like, no. So that was it. I had, like, y'all's folks were, like, at least, entrenched in pop culture to a degree.
Are you venting some childhood trauma here?
All we ever do is vent childhood trauma. Like, this is our lives.
That's actually what this podcast is about.
I feel like anybody with a podcast or anybody who critiques movies, i.e. anybody who writes about movies, is literally perpetually reliving and venting about and processing childhood trauma.
It's funny.
Tell me one person who isn't, and I will eat cardboard.
I was on a video chat with one of my best friends today, Madeline, and she was talking about how her mom never let her dye her hair. So she's never dyed her hair before. And I was like, as someone whose mom took them to get a tattoo when they were 12, like, yes. I've had my hair dyed when I was
I'm thinking of you and how literally the first day I ever met you, you had lavender-colored hair.
Yeah, that's what we're talking about. That was before she met me.
Yeah. I was like, that purple-haired girl.
That purple-haired girl in the kids section that didn't do her job.
I did not say that, but anyway, I digress. Listen, you're my fam. Don't even go there, okay?
So I think it's time Xylia hits us with that letterbox bio.
Oh, yes. Let me tell you about it. Okay, before you die, you see. That's one sentence. That doesn't really make sense, but okay. It sounded like just another urban legend. A videotape filled with nightmarish images, leading to a phone call foretelling the viewer's death in exactly 7 days. As a newspaper reporter, Rachel Keller was naturally skeptical of the story until 4 teenagers all met with such a tape. All met with mysterious deaths exactly 1 week after watching just such a tape. Allowing her investigative curiosity to get the better of her, Rachel tracks down the video, ... and watches it. Now she has just 7 days to unravel the mystery of the ring. Okay, I see so many problems with this bio. First of all, she didn't even know about the tape prior to the deaths. And it's not just 4 random teenagers. One of them's her fucking, like, niece.
And it was all of their friends.
Yeah. Also, this is a really long and awkwardly written bio, but okay.
Okay, letterbox. Okay.
More or less, are these, like, user submitted or what?
Probably, I would imagine.
I was also just thinking, what happens when we show our kids this movie someday, or like they watch it and they're like, what the fuck are they putting in that TV? It's a videotape. It's not even a DVD.
Not even a DVD.
I mean, I'm just saying, was 2002 really that long ago?
It was pretty long ago.
Yeah, but it'll be like a
20
curiosity, like when, you know, we would watch a movie where it was like someone from like the 40s or 50s, like calling the operator and her taking out the like switch and putting it in another one, you know what I mean? It's like you can't comprehend it at all because it's never happened to you, and you know, but like you look at it and go, oh wow, I'm glad that I didn't have to live through that time. Yeah. They'll be looking at that and going, I'm glad I didn't have to put a fucking giant goddamn like 8-inch piece of plastic in a huge metal thing on a huge glass concoction to watch a goddamn movie. That's gonna kill me, you know?
Like, yeah, minor details.
So, I'm bringing back quickly the only segment that me and Mike like. We have to talk about two people in this movie.
Oh no.
Number one,
Naomi
Watts, Rachel.
Legend, icon, queen of everything. Yes, you're right.
Unlike Troll 2, we actually have someone we know and has been in other movies.
It's someone that we know and love.
Exactly.
Is she not like an Oscar award winner? You're like, oh,
this is a woman who has won every award in the planet. Like,
well, and interesting enough, I thought it'd be interesting to bring up that when Gore Verbinski made this, he said he wanted the cast to be relatively unknown, which really she was pretty unknown when this came out.
Yeah, she would have been.
Yeah, she'd been doing like indie stuff. Like, I mean, I think of the first time I saw her in something, and, you know, to me, one of her best roles, and it was obviously Mulholland Drive.
Obviously.
She was nobody when she did that.
Yeah.
Like, literally nobody.
A lot of the times.
So this is really just a few short years later.
Yeah. Well, a lot of times when I think of her, I think of I Heart Huckabees, which would have been around this time, and I think she was like relatively indie
darling.
Yeah, and I mean, really, like, that was an indie movie.
Yeah,
the cast had a couple of really heavy hitters in it, but like,
Jude Law and
yeah, but I mean, it was still a very much like one of those kind of movies that has a couple of heavy hitters in the cast who, you know, it still flies under the radar. And if you ask most casual moviegoers, did you see I Heart Huckabees? They're gonna say, "Are you having a stroke right now?"
Yeah, they've never heard of it.
And, you know, I said to Xylia, the universe just smiles upon us. There's only really one other actor we have to talk about in here that plays, I quote, male teen number one.
So
I'm waiting for this. I've been like getting wet waiting for you to mention this.
This contributes to how this podcast is actually just a cover for an OC appreciation podcast.
Yes!
We get an Adam Brody appearance.
Literally, my first two notes, number 2 is Adam !!
I don't understand. It's really quite interesting how this podcast is about horror movies, but the OC can pretty much be like, you know, like tied back to almost every movie we watch.
Even when there's nobody in it who has anything to do with the OC, we somehow find a way to like 6 degrees of separation every movie. And that's the new theory. Also, side podcast number 972, 6 degrees of separation from the OC. The OC is... Who was that about? Channing Tatum? No.
What? Who was that about?
Kevin Bacon! Channing Tatum! Oh my god! Anyway, I was gonna say Carol Channing. So, yes, we need to do a side podcast how every movie is 6 degrees of separation away from the OC.
Yes.
I'm convinced.
That would be brilliant.
I'm gonna write a book.
Sidecast 11,026.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, also interesting, a heavy hitter from Gore Verbinski, but kind of left horror after this and just went on to make Pirates of the Caribbean movies.
Oh, that's the same person.
We love a good movie series based on a theme park ride.
Although he did return to form. I saw that. I didn't know he was the guy that directed A Cure for Wellness, which I haven't seen, but I know is like a critical darling and sounds like something I'd be into, but I had never seen it. Well, let's get into our first experiences with this film. Is it the first time we have seen it? or heard about it. Let's start with you, Xylia.
So I've seen this movie several times, like quite a few times, I would say. I can't quite pinpoint the first time I ever saw it, but it was when it first came out. And I think like there were these two best friends that I had at the time, and we'd always watch, one of our things would be like movies, watching movies. And I think that's probably who I saw it with, but yeah.
How about you, Mike?
I had seen it roundabout, when it first came out, shortly thereafter, and honestly, it was one of those that, like, I thoroughly enjoyed when I originally saw it, but for some weird reason, I never saw the sequel. I was actually gifted the original Japanese novel that, the series was based on. I was really excited to read that, and it got lost in my, like, bajillion books that I always would buy throughout my whole life. Somehow it kept getting pushed to the bottom of the pile. And I was like, I always think about it, like, every couple of years I'll think of it, like, oh my god, The Ring. I need to go back and rewatch that. Like, the cast was great. It was a really good movie. And it just never got around to rewatching it. So, like, it's been one of those that, I've really wanted to revisit and see if it was as good as I remembered it being. So I really enjoyed that was one of our choices for this year, because it's one of those movies that it always keeps bubbling to the surface in my memory of something that, like, I wanted to revisit, and just for whatever reason have never gotten around to, like, channeling the energy to revisit. So here we go.
So I've seen it several times, but it was in a short couple year period, if that makes sense. I haven't seen it for probably 15, 16, 17 years.
Yeah, and I'm probably in the same boat. Like, I never saw this in the theater. I remember seeing it, like, when it first came out on VHS at that time. And, like Xylia said, like, I remember seeing this at, like, birthday parties and, like, sleepovers and, like, just stuff like that. Like, people were always watching this movie. I remember, like, enjoying it when it came out. I didn't know anything at that time. Like we said earlier, like, I was only in grade 9. Like, I didn't know there was a Japanese film of it before. I didn't know that the Japanese film was based on a Japanese book.
I'm actually just finding out that it's based on a book right now.
Yeah, but it's funny because there were, 2 American versions. There was, like, a sequel to this, which, by the way, I never saw.
There was 2 sequels.
I didn't see any of them.
Oh, okay, I didn't know that. And I know there's
2 and one called Rings, which is the third one.
Oh, okay, yeah. I was gonna say, because I knew there was a bunch of Japanese ones, like 3 or 4.
Yeah.
And then several years ago, I think the author released an official, like, sequel book called Rings, and I feel like then they obviously made an adaptation of that as well.
Yeah.
And I thought it was funny that they made so many adaptations of his works, and then he finally was like, I'm gonna write another book about it. You know what I mean?
So was this?
I guess they've done like 5 movies based on my original novel. I might as well write a sequel myself.
Was this book in English or, like, translated from Japanese?
It was translated from Japanese, so it might have even been several years old by the time it was published in English.
Right. Oh, yeah.
Just a reminder to follow us on all of our social media at It Slays Podcast. We're on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, soon to be on Tumblr. Of course, we're on Spotify and iTunes. And if you're adding us on iTunes, don't forget to leave us an iTunes review. It doesn't even need to be 5-star. We appreciate 5-star. But the most important part is we want to hear from you. So write us a text review in the iTunes app, and we will make sure to give you a shout out on the podcast. Every review helps as it bumps us up in the search engine, and that's what it's all about. Back to the podcast. Well, let's get into the review. You know where we're starting. Favorite scene. Xylia, you have the floor.
I'm gonna go with what my favorite... Okay, I had 2 favorite scenes. I want to say what my favorite scenes were back then. So one of them, obviously, is when she, like, is coming out of the TV. I think that's kind of like a classic...
Iconic.
...scene in this movie. And the
Cindy, my pussy's leaking. I mean, the TV's leaking.
What?
You know, Scary Movie when she's coming out of the TV and she's like, Cindy, the TV's leaking. But then it got turned into a meme where if you're, horny, you say, Cindy, my pussy's leaking. Anyway, I spent too much time online. Okay.
So that was one. The other one that I always really thought was disturbing when I was a kid was the one with the horse running off of the boat and smashing itself on the boat, and then them running to the other side and seeing the red water. I always thought that was really disturbing.
Yeah, I have to jump in and say that was also the first time I watched it.
Yeah.
That was one of the most memorable things to me, and I remembered it for years afterwards. And upon rewatching it, when I was thinking about, recording tonight, obviously, I was like, what would my favorite scene have been? It's still that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think there are some standouts, but, I agree with you. There's something about that scene. It's so horrifically disturbing on a number of levels, but it's also really, well shot and well structured.
Yeah.
Just anytime a film not harms an animal, but, alludes to harm to an animal.
Yeah.
I feel like it's always a shock because the public gets so viscerally upset by, and it doesn't matter if it's a dog or a cat or a wild animal. There are a lot of people that just, when they're watching a movie, if any animal finds any kind of harm, they get horrifically upset and will not watch it. I had a friend who, if an animal got harmed while we were watching a movie, she would just get up and leave.
Yeah. I
and they get very mad at me. If it was something I'd seen before and I made her watch, she would. And so I feel like it was a really cool scene, and it was a really great choice to kind of shock and disturb the viewer, because especially in North America, you're not used to that, because it's we're gonna really go out of our way to not upset the audience, even if it's a horror movie, which is literally meant to upset you. So I just thought that was a great scene. It was really well shot. Horses are fucking freaky and beautiful, and just the fact that it doesn't show it, it banging against the side of the boat was really disturbing, but it doesn't show anything happen to it. It just shows the blood in the water, and I'm it's such a Jaws blood blossom sort of moment. So that was really well done.
It's every horse girl's worst nightmare.
Exactly. Everyone knows a horse girl.
Yeah, it's true.
See, I feel like my answer's basic bitch, and I mean, my favorite scene's the video.
Yeah.
Girl, listen, I was gonna say the video, but I knew you were gonna choose it because you're a basic bitch.
I am a basic bitch, but I mean,
like I said, remember how I said I walked out and there was very little I remembered? The two things I always remembered from that movie, 3, her coming out of the TV, the video, and the horse part.
Yeah.
That's all I remembered. And I was that was the movie to me for millions of years, was just those 3 images.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I feel like if you grew up and, in those formative years in the 2000s, the Ring video is iconic. I can see a still image. If someone just showed a still image, I'd be like, oh yeah, that's from the Ring video. I think it was just as effective this watch as it was when I first saw it. It's a creepy-ass video. It's just fucking bizarre and weird.
I think for me, too, with the video, it was the element that, the whole concept of the movie was that if you watched the video, you're gonna die in 7 days, and you're watching the video. So there's the element of the fact that you shouldn't be.
It's actually kind of a brilliant twist on a Candyman sort of thing, because if you're watching Candyman and afterwards you're oh tee-hee, let's go look in the mirror and say Candyman, and you don't want to, but when you're watching The Ring and you're forced by virtue of sitting in the seat watching the movie to watch the video, it's them pinning you down and going, you have to say Candyman 5 times while watching this movie, right?
Yeah, no, exactly.
It's such a great moment, yeah.
Kind of my follow-up favorite scene, which Xylia kind of alluded to at the beginning, it is kind of the end, the reveal at the end when they spin the chair around and he's got the horrific face. When I think about the ending of The Ring, I always wonder, I feel like that's kind of the birth of, creepypasta, YouTube. That used to be a whole thing, scare videos where you just watch something and...
You know how there'd be, ones that'll just be oh, this is a video of birds, and then it would be ah!
And
is that what you mean?
And I feel like a lot of the times they use the girl from The Ring for that. Like, it'd be like someone dressed up as that. So, yeah, I love the quick glimpses of the, victims that we get, because I think they're super effective in
well,
the
they never
film.
linger on it. It only shows 2 of them, and it's like it's such a quick cut. Like, the only time you'd ever be able to focus on it is, on home video, like on a DVD or, God forbid, a tape, right? And, like, you pause it.
Yeah.
And it's only ever after the fact. Like, it always, like, cuts away from them looking at them. And then after you exit the, like, location where they die, it cuts back and then gives you a brief glimpse of their face, and that's it.
Yeah.
So, like, when you're expecting to see a brief glimpse of it, you don't, but then moments later when you think I'm safe, it gives you that flicker, and it's like, oh, holy fuck,
Yeah, well, and I think you almost explained it really well with the horse scene, where, like, Gore Verbinski executed that kind of Jaws mentality of filmmaking really well in it, where you don't linger on anything.
He's not about the gore.
Yeah, everything is a build-up, and it's all about the suspense and getting to the scare, not necessarily the scare itself.
Yeah, and then he's going to give you a scare, but it's not going to be what you expect when you expect it.
Yeah,
it's going to be just slightly afterwards, just when you're like, oh, okay, I'm breathing now. Oh, fuck. Like...
Another scene I really loved too, I thought was really beautiful, was when Naomi Watts goes to the cabin number 12 the first time, and it's like very muted colors, except for that tree is so
the
striking.
Tree, yes.
It's so
I've notes
striking.
about this, yeah.
As like an adult, to me, that is a scene that I don't even remember from when I had seen it before, but it's like stood out to me. It was gorgeous.
I was gonna say, I really noticed the tree. I really noticed on this watch, which I shouldn't say I noticed, because when I think about this film, I always think about it, but I guess now that I look at films more critically and think about them differently, is I forgot how, like, green lens, like green and blue colored this film is.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because, we're pretty much 20 years, ahead of this film now, and so many other films have, like, tried to use this exact same palette. And this is kind of the first film I can remember watching that had this color palette.
I was actually thinking about how well this movie would fit into, like, today's landscape of horror stuff. Because I feel in the past couple years, really rural, islandy, like, not like Caribbean, tropical island, but like rugged, like North Atlantic islandy stuff has been becoming popular. So you have like The Lighthouse, you have the American Horror Story season, you have like Midnight Mass, and this is basically, besides in New York, it's set on in a similar setting.
Yeah.
And why do they... Okay, so why is it always that when they're on a place that looks like Nova Scotia or Newfoundland, it looks super drab? You know what I mean? Like, it's a lot of grays.
I know, and like, okay, granted, the sky is very frequently gray, but...
It's actually...
That's about it.
Colorful places.
Honestly.
Because that's not spooky.
Yeah, it's not spooky.
And here's the thing, like, most locations like that will compensate for the grayness of the sky with, like,
incredibly bright colors.
Very prominent pops of color in the architecture and, the landscape.
Yeah, exactly.
Where you can.
Yeah.
No, it's so funny, but, like, I literally had a note about that. I was like, I mean, I know you said, like, it was, kind of like a trendsetter and one of the first to kind of use that, but my note,
I don't know, and
I could be wrong with this. I could be wrong with this. I literally said, hang on, now let me find it.
It was just that it would fit in well with. Right.
Oh yeah, so I called it a washed out, blue, super clean and sterile Terminator-like aesthetic. To me, it looked a lot like Terminator 2. Not Terminator 1, because Terminator 1 had a much more vibrant neon 80s aesthetic, but then when you moved into Terminator 2, it was the early 90s, and it was very clean and metallic and shiny and blue, and sterile, and I found that when I was watching this, I thought it is that very sterile, not in like, I'm not saying this in a negative way, but like it had that hospital-y blue and white sheen to everything. And I remember like when, you know, that scene at the end, you know, when she's crawling out of the TV and stuff, and like his whole apartment is awash in that, but then, you know, it shows her coming out and she's very much black and white and blue because it's like a staticky TV image.
Yeah.
Then it shifts over to him and he's like dressed in color, and like a couple of the things behind him have a little bit of a color pop to it. And like it really drove home that most of this movie is that like blue, green, black, white, blue. So then when you have the tree and stuff that like has, but it's the same thing, the video, which is of course the most vivid, memorable like centerpiece of the movie. It's literally the whole point of the movie.
Yeah.
It's done in that aesthetic. So I find that like they were using the like vocabulary of the video to inform the like aesthetic of the rest of the movie, which I thought was a really cool choice, except for those couple of like moments. So definitely. You know, brava Gore Verbinski, bravo everything.
I was gonna say like you know, I feel like Samara is kind of, you know, after this came out, I think over time she's kind of been hoisted into, you know, definitely, you know, the pantheon of creepy children and kids movies and horror films and creepy villains in general.
You know who's creepier than her?
Aiden?
The kid. the boy.
Oh my god, I know. I wrote a note about that. I was like, the early 2000s was like the creepy, awkward kid boom.
Yeah.
Like, every horror movie and every thriller of any kind over, like, the early 2000s always had a creepy, awkward, weird-looking, gangly kid.
Yeah. I actually wrote, I love this boy. I hope my kid's like that.
Oh, he was great, and he was really good. Honestly, like, in a movie where, like, the lead is Naomi Watts, the fact that he like matched her. I don't know what this kid has been in since he's grown up, but like
I looked it up.
Check it out because
not much.
Like,
I think he has
was
like
good.
He
like stayed toe to toe with Naomi Watts, and that's saying something because that bitch is a legend.
Yeah, I looked it up. Like I think he's been in like 8 films. Like I'm pretty sure he stopped acting. He was in apparently one of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre reboots.
Oh my god, I don't even know which one that was because there have been like 8.
I feel like it was the first reboot that they did there in the 2000s.
With Jesse Biel?
Which would make sense because that would have been like a little after this.
A few years
film.
after this, yeah.
Yeah, I got a question for you. So we kind of get all that exposition towards the beginning after the cousin dies and Naomi Watts goes to the funeral and is talking to her sister. Is it her sister or something?
Is this the one about...
Well, my question is, so the sister's talking about like, oh, I looked into it.
Okay.
No,
I have the same note.
No teenager's heart has ever stopped.
Ever just stopped. I was like, shouldn't she fucking like look up why her face looks like that? Like she only looked up why her heart just randomly stopped. Is that what you're gonna say?
No.
Oh.
My thing was I refuse to believe that no one in the world, young person ever's heart stopped.
No, just
okay. Like first of all, I know it was 2002, but they still had Google, and there was still a wealth of information on the internet, and you could easily find out that literally there's like, I'm sure 25 heart conditions where someone who's 8's heart can just stop. I know several people growing up with who had heart conditions where they literally could have dropped dead at any moment, so...
Did they have...
Maybe that's just because I live in Newfoundland, but, you know, whatever.
Oh, yeah, like the highest rate of, like, heart conditions because of all the salt.
I used Google
Ask
in it.
Jeeves when I was in 2002.
You're the only person I've ever heard of that has used
Why would you
Jeeves.
ever ask Jeeves anything?
Because that's what my dad had on the computer.
Ask Jeeves.
He didn't even have Netscape. He used Ask Jeeves.
Well, to look up questions.
Ask Jeeves is the
every search engine search is a question.
Yeah,
there is no use of a search engine that isn't a question. Even if you're just looking for an image, you're like, what does this look like?
But I'm just saying, like, other than like typing in www.whatever.com, it was like you went to Ask Jeeves. I'm telling you.
No one went.
I'm gonna fight you here right now because I don't know what the fuck you're talking about with this Ask Jeeves bullshit. What? I visited Ask Jeeves like 3 times in my life, and that was like...
It was a search engine.
As a fucking joke. I was memeing. I was the first memer. I memed by asking Jeeves. I was like, hey Jeeves, like, why is your mom a slut? You know?
Oh my god, no, it was a search engine.
Talking that shit to Ask Jeeves.
I'm looking up, because it
Girl,
was
look up who powered Ask Jeeves. I bet you $10 it was something that went under in like 2000 and...
Yeah, but Google
well, when did this come out? 2002? I'll bet you Ask Jeeves went
1999.
under in 2001.
No. Okay, I'm gonna research this.
Now... I will say, you know...
Hey everybody, stay tuned for the Movie House Horror mini-sode where we bitch next week about Ask Jeeves and its origins.
Okay, I'm telling you right here, I'm on the Wikipedia page for Google, and I'm telling you in 2002, Google was not... It was invented, but it wasn't a thing that you used.
Okay. But like
How
Internet
do you know what I
Explorer-
used or didn't use?
Because you probably used Netscape with a fucking... I don't even know. You were on like Google, Yahoo Answers or fucking AOL.
I mean,
like,
How
search
dare you?
engine
I
or
always
something.
Netscaped until Google, okay?
Netscape and Yahoo Answers is still better than Ask Jeeves.
I'm looking up Ask Jeeves.
I was gonna say, when I was
No,
watching...
hang on. No, bro, I gotta stop
It's
you there because
ask.com
I
now.
will say right now,
What's
Ask
your
Jeeves was like horrifically classist because it was like enslaving the search engine to your needs.
Oh my god! It lasted roughly until 2005 when it was rebranded as ask.com. Just saying.
Yes, because asking Jeeves is a classist construction of a search engine.
It is.
This is a terrible conversation.
This question, so one of the main questions, you know how when you Google something and it's like commonly asked questions, is Jeeves dead? That's one of the questions.
You know who probably asked that? Some idiot that used AskJeeves.com in their life.
I don't know. That's what my dad had on the computer. I don't know. Oh, one thing my dad didn't let me do is use ICQ. And then I had to use the ICQ Lite.
This really has turned into a podcast about the rain, into Xylia venting about her childhood.
Okay, go ahead.
I wanted to bring up also about childhoods that as I was watching this, I was thinking about, teenagers and adults and kids are putting in these videotapes that maybe they think's one thing, turns out to be this tape that kills you. Actually kind of made me think about a similar experience me and Xylia had, where we were at her house and we were trying to watch videos, and then we opened a video that we thought was one thing, but really it was a porn called Ass Man.
That was on the computer.
Yeah, I'm saying.
Oh my god.
It was a real ring situation for us. In fact, the video may have
I
been...
think it was like labeled something else.
It may have been more
Well, you don't
horrific
label
than the
your
ring.
videos like
My dad
Cocksuckers 2000,
My dad did.
whatever.
He just left the download.
You called it like
name.
Family Vacation
That sounds like a
2001
terrible idea.
That sounds
I
like
don't know.
someone that would definitely go to jail for something would name their Ass Man porno Family Vacation.
Listen, you had to try to be discreet, am I right?
You just put them into like hidden folder.
Or okay, not something like that. You'd at least call it like, I don't know.
Oh my god.
Something innocuous, like PBS Pledge Drive 2000 or something.
Around this,
Complete Anne of Green Gables miniseries.
Xylia definitely would have clicked
I
that.
would have clicked it. Around this time, a song came out called Ballin' Is My Hobby. And it was like, ballin' is my hobby, ballin' is my hobby. And my parents like took me and Rowan aside and were like, we saw on the computer there's this song called Ballin' Is My Hobby. What does that mean? Like, it's about sex. And we're like, what are you talking about? They thought ballin' was sex. And I'm just like, no. They wouldn't believe me.
And then you're like, we've seen Ass Man.
Yeah.
Listen, back to the ring.
Okay, back to the ring.
All I thought about when I watched this is this not the precursor to our all-time favorite movie, It Follows? I was like, there's so much inspiration that there's no way.
It's so funny. I said the same thing. I was like, it's very much a thinner It Follows pass the curse on, sort of, yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
It's kind of like the grotesque deaths that you don't overly see.
Yeah.
Even like there's a little bit of the same coloring going on in some of the stuff.
I didn't draw that parallel, but it makes sense.
So I'm really convinced that he, had to be influenced by The Ring, which, I mean, is a topic we should definitely touch on in of itself. This is probably like, if I think of like juggernaut horror movies of the 2000s, this is it. This has to be it. Is there...
I feel like there's others, but this was
Well, I mean, and this is funny because this was kind of an anomaly, because I feel like, I could be wrong again, but like, I feel like this was the weird Venn diagram overlap, because you're coming out in the early 2000s, you've like kind of done that like 90s slasher revival thing where there was a few slasher revivals that were like really critically acclaimed, like, Scream and everything, and then by the time you get to this, I feel like critics were like, okay, enough of this horror shit.
I feel
like this was kind of like the Venn diagram overlap of like blockbuster horror with something that was really arty and like very well done and, very like aesthetically pleasing with like really good acting and stuff that critics really liked too. So I feel like it was very, it was very much a dark horse, if you will.
I feel like around this time too, psychological horror, psychological thriller was like a big genre.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
I always have considered this movie that.
Really?
Yeah.
And now,
yeah, because I mean, like, this is one of those that's like a supernatural movie, but it's also about, like you said, paranoia and like suspense and stuff.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, when I was talking about like being such a juggernaut, I thought it was interesting because I feel whenever someone watches this, the first thing I ever think about when I think of The Ring, the first thing that comes in my mind is The Grudge.
Because it was out at pretty much the same time, though.
So, I mean, when
I
looked
at the Vogue, Vogue 5 years of
this came out before The Grudge.
I know, you've never seen The Grudge, though.
Yeah, I've never seen The Grudge.
Oh, hang on, girls, hang on.
Besides,
wasn't Amber Tamblyn in both this one and The Grudge remake?
Was she in The Grudge?
Was she in The Grudge, or am I thinking of somebody else?
And I think you're thinking about
because my very first note for this movie was Amber Tamblyn, 4 exclamation points, because I love her.
Oh, maybe. I think, too, like, The Grudge came out around the same time. They were both, like, Japanese, like, based on Japanese films. They have both had kids that were, like, black and white. But past that...
Well, I mean...
I guess I had
They both had wonderful blonde girls that we love in them.
And, definitely they got crossed in popular culture, because, I mean, it was only, like, a year or two ago that Japan was made, like, a King Kong versus Godzilla movie that was Samara and the kid from The Grudge, and it was them versus each other.
I think they just have, like, intrinsic links, but mostly because of they're both based on Japanese movies, and they both were, like, the same vibe and came out around each other.
Yeah. Okay, I'm not sure why I thought that Amber Tamblyn was in The Grudge. She isn't, so carry on.
But
isn't Sarah Michelle Gellar really the only big person in that?
Clea Duvall, how dare you?
Sorry.
Jeez. But yeah, no, and I mean, when you look on the Wikipedia, it's kind of interesting to see the doors that it opened, because like on the Wikipedia page for The Ring, it talks about, because of the success of this, you get The Grudge, Dark Water,
Shudder. I was thinking that too. Another water-based Japanese horror remake.
Yeah, Shudder and The Eye, none of which I think did as well as this. I mean, The Grudge did fairly well.
I mean,
that got
The Grudge
sequels.
Was like massive.
Yeah. But yeah, like it basically, once this came out, everyone's like, we're hitting Japan for anything horror they have, and we are.
Well, yeah, this literally started that like 5-6 year wave of J-horror remakes.
Yeah,
Japan was
like you can literally pinpoint it to this one movie, and it was because again, it was really like one of the first of its kind, and it was so well done.
Yeah,
right. Like it was so well acted, it was well written. That direction is insane. The aesthetic is great. The cinematography, everything about it was so good. So even when they like, The Grudge was great. And, you know, you look at something like Dark Water, like where you have fucking Oscar winner Jennifer Connelly, icon, legend, queen, but like none of those come close to the artistry of this because, you know, really it's all kind of like, they're all cash-ins in a way.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Even
100%.
when they're well done, they're not as well done because this was like lightning in a bottle that they were like, we need to capture this over and over.
A big thing I noticed watching it this time, too, is I never realized that this movie is 2 hours long. Which, at first, when I saw that, I was kind of worried.
It's kind of long for a horror movie.
Well, and I was like, it's like a blockbuster horror movie. And watching it this time, like, before I sat down and watched it, because, like I said, I haven't seen it since it came out around
Yeah, and this
that
is
time.
before all the fucking Marvel movies where everything, the standard now for a big Hollywood movie is, like, to be 5 fucking hours long.
But I thought, like...
The pacing was good.
I thought the pacing was really good.
It's brilliant. I'm not gonna lie, I was not looking forward to rewatching this based on the length alone. And I feel like, and I've been very tired this last week from working early in the morning. And so when I sat down to watch this, I was not looking forward to it being that long. And it was over before I knew it. Like, it's so well paced.
Yeah, like
I didn't fall asleep once.
Xylia didn't fall asleep
that's
once.
that
It
right
passed
there.
the
That
Xylia meter.
That right there, ladies and gentlemen, is the true test.
Yeah.
If Xylia does not fall asleep,
but I
you
mean
have paced your movie.
That's a gift in and of itself. Because I mean, as we usually always talk about pacing when we review movies, and there's a lot of movies we review that are like an hour and 20 minutes that we're like, this pacing's terrible, it's long.
Yeah.
And for this to be able to go pretty much 2 hours, to me, I was like, I probably wouldn't have noticed an extra half hour tacked on to it. Like, I was interested in everything that was going on. I was just enjoying the journey and the ride there.
I think it was the perfect length. I think if they had have added more time, like a half hour, I think then you would start noticing like the pacing being off. But I can't picture the movie being under 2 hours because there was a lot to unpack.
There's a lot of plot, and frankly, even in 2 hours, there's a lot of unanswered questions.
Okay, I do, and speaking of unanswered questions, maybe I missed it, or, so, Cabin 12. I don't remember the cabin number from when I had seen it in the past, but that doesn't have, the number 12 doesn't have any significance, does it?
I don't think.
But I feel like that's a missed opportunity.
A missed opportunity.
Okay, so one point that I did want to mention that I thought was, like, so interesting about this movie was the use of horses, which, we were talking about earlier, obviously, with two of our favorite scene being that horse scene, and the fact that obviously horses were a motif. It's kind of like the Silence of the Lambs.
Yeah.
Which is obviously a very important image in the Silence of the Lambs, except it's like the noise of the horses. You can call The Ring the noises of the horses, and it would totally fit. Anyway, but I thought the fact that horses were so prominent in the video and in Samara's story / memories, but also in that horrifically traumatizing / scary / really cool scene on the boat, because horses are generally speaking an animal that I guess symbolically and culturally is something that's horses heal you, they're a healing animal and an animal that you bond, and it calms you and stuff. And I guess that's kind of why there's horse girls, but it also has this air of privilege, and if you're a horse girl, if you have horses, it it gives you kind of a certain status or whatever. But I love how this totally undermines that, and it's the horses in this are tied with her, trauma and with all this horrific shit that's happening. But then that scene on the ferry, especially with the horses are usually so calm and shit. So when they start freaking the fuck out, it's so scary and so traumatizing.
Well,
and when that horse just literally looks like it's gonna harm a human, and then that's really, really scary. And then when it jumps over the edge, bangs against the side of the boat and goes under and stuff, it's so horrific. That's why that scene to me is so memorable, because in my mind I just feel horses are for healing, and they're calming, and they're a friend to horse girls everywhere, and but there is horses do have that kind of it's about healing and bonding and stuff like that. So to me, the use of horses are not wolves. Wolves, you do not think about that. Horses have a very specific connotation, and I love that they played that up. Not it's not, the horses are not horrifically scary in themselves, but the use of the image of a horse is very unsettling through the whole movie. It kind of continually, to me, created moments of unease throughout the movie that, like, you can't call them, like, oh, maybe you might not, like, really find them scary, but, like, to me, it makes my skin crawl, and it's, like, really uneasy. I don't know if you guys felt that way.
I've never seen a horse that just, like, freaks out so quickly, but also...
See, me either, and I grew up, like, many of my family have farms, like, out in the country, and I spent all of my vacations and shit, like, on farms when I was growing up. I rode, wasn't like a horse rider, but, like, I would go and get on their horses all the time, and I was around horses all the time, and I never saw them freak out like this.
If you approach a horse and they freak out, you should just leave them alone. And
exactly. See, and I feel like that's another thing about, like, I feel like horses are, like, kind of in tune to, like, a vibe or energy. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, if you're having trouble with your horse, call Mike, the horse girl.
The horse girl.
Oh, listen, I'm not my friend Emily. She's a horse girl. She says she hates horses, but we know she loves them.
So I had 2 questions kind of in the same vein of each other. So if you were Naomi Watts and your niece died because of this video, and you, like, were at the point of investigation that you believed it, would you destroy the video?
She did.
Eventually.
Yeah, but not until the very end.
Yeah,
when it was
so
clear that the video was, like, conduit of, like, evil.
Basically, like, would you sacrifice yourself? Because you have to have seen the video in order for her to want to investigate.
I know, but would you destroy it so other people couldn't see it?
Okay, so what you're saying is, would you destroy it and sacrifice yourself?
Yeah, and then
that actually ties into one of my notes. I'm actually glad you asked that. That's a really good question.
The other part of it was, would you show it to someone else?
Okay, yes, that's literally, like, my last note, which, you know, I had, like, triple starred, which was, you know, the whole conceit of, like Thinner and stuff like that, obviously. Would you, it's like a philosophical moral conundrum.
Yeah.
Would you say this ends with me, or would you say I'm going to save both myself and my loved ones, not just my family?
Yeah.
By passing it on to somebody else? Again, like, it follows. And who would you choose? Would you choose somebody that wronged you? Would you choose some random person who maybe, like, is outcast from society, like a homeless person or something? And I think that's such a good question.
Follows. Like, remember he, like, handed it off to the sex worker?
Exactly. Yeah. And that's what I'm saying. Like, you have these people who are on the fringes. It's like, what? And I kept thinking about that now. And I never thought about that, obviously, back in the day when I was a youngster and I watched this movie. Because that didn't occur to me. But then it's like, the question then becomes, whose life are you going to devalue to elevate yours or your loved ones?
I think, like, you know, handing it off to someone who, because of, like, their status in society and that it's, like, not a high status, is, like, morally reprehensible.
Absolutely. It's like, why are you, as a blonde, privileged, well-off white lady and your privileged, well-off child, like, and I mean, they don't show this at the end because they cut it off, which I did enjoy. I did enjoy that they didn't show who or what, you know, they did after this. I mean, I don't know what happened in the sequel, but, you know, that was one of the things about It Follows that even when we recorded didn't bother me as much as it does now, was that this poor person that they decided, if this is who I'm going to give this to, who has no concept of what they're getting into and can't hand it off to somebody else themselves.
Yeah.
Like, you're saying your life is worth less than mine.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, because you are a sex worker or you are below me on the, like, social rung. And it's, like, so disturbing, but it's this, like, to me, it's one of the more interesting questions of this movie and of that movie. You know, it's like, it's actually absolutely this, like, moral challenge. Yeah, it's a conundrum.
I think I would
I wouldn't be able to do it, honestly. I would
100%
destroy the tape and say this ends here.
Yeah, same.
I feel like the issue is that I feel like most people that would pass it on before they realize it's real.
That is a problem.
Because I feel like it's like, oh yeah, a tape that kills you, and then, like, you tell someone about it, and like, oh, I want to see this tape.
Kind of like the guy in the movie.
Yeah, like, doesn't believe it. So, but I mean, if you could make sure no one would watch it, I'd like to think that I wouldn't pass it on. I feel like those are, like, hard things, you know, but if it's real, would you actually make that choice? Yes, everyone says they wouldn't.
I would.
But, you know, when push comes to shove and you know...
Yeah, but then exactly. You have this also, it's it's fight or flight, it's, you know, self-preservation.
I would.
You would.
I wouldn't pass it on.
Now, you'd just do it because then you figured you get out of watching any movie Mike ever picks again.
Yep.
You're welcome.
Well, let's go to our final question is it unsettling? We'll start with Mike this time.
I feel like when I first watched it, I found it fairly unsettling, especially since, like, the video and stuff like that, and there were moments in it that, you know, at the time, you know, whatever that was, like, almost 20 years ago, you know, it was, and I hadn't obviously seen, you know, like, a lot of Japanese horror and stuff, so I'd never certainly seen the original, that were unsettling. I never found it, like, a scary movie per se, but I found the video, I found the avant-garde imagery of it a bit unsettling, and I found moments in it unsettling. Like I said, like the horse thing, because even then I kind of like knew horses to me were like an image of comfort and freedom, and it became an image of like kind of terror and oppression in this, so I thought that was like really well done. But other than brief moments throughout the movie, I found that it wasn't, and I don't know, and again, I still haven't seen, and I'm gonna remedy that, by the way, after this episode. I will be watching the original. I haven't seen the original like Ringu movie, so I don't know how much they sanitized it down, but I feel like outside of those moments of creepiness, that it was a little too sterile to be like a scary movie, but I still appreciate it. Like, I feel like the artistry is there, and like there's great acting and great cinematography and stuff, and I feel like for a blockbuster horror movie, it's well done. But I just feel like outside of those few moments, and it's 2 hours long, as we were saying, it's a long movie, so for the fact that there's only those few flickering brief couple of minutes where you feel that kind of dread and unease, it's not enough. So, not really.
Yeah, I was gonna say the same. Like, I can't really remember if I probably didn't think this was scary when I first saw it, but I think for like a blockbuster popcorn flick, like, I think you hit the nail on the head, was that it looks awesome, and it is a pretty well done movie, but I wouldn't necessarily say it's unsettling.
Yeah, so I think, like, back when I first saw it, I definitely thought it was unsettling, and like a little bit disturbing, but yeah, now, no, I don't either.
Horror hounds. Do you guys like horror music? I like horror music. Xylia likes horror music. We know Mike definitely loves horror music. So if you love horror music like we do, join us on Spotify. We have a playlist up called the It Slays Podcast Horrific Playlist. We have some of our favorite tasty jams from some of our favorite horror movies, and we're always consistently adding to the list. And let us know. You can email us or Facebook or Instagram us and let us know if there's anything we should add to the playlist. Alright, well, if we are all comfortable, we will go into rating it for anyone that is a new listener. So our rating system is nay, okay, yay, or slay. Xylia, we will allow you to go first.
I'm gonna give it a yay, because I think it's one of those, it's an iconic movie for North America at that point in time. I think it holds up till now, like it's still a good movie. It's beautiful, Naomi Watts is great, her son is creepy as fuck. Like, I would say, I wouldn't want to give it an okay. It's a yay. I think everybody should see The Ring.
All right. How about you, Mike?
You know what? I'm going to agree. I was sort of torn because, again, like I said, I didn't find it as, like, kind of creepy as, like, maybe I did when it first came out. But at the same time, I look at it and go, of all of that huge swath of, like, Asian horror remakes that happened in like even 10 years time around that period, it was like one of the first, and I think still the best. I think the artistry that happened in this movie was like way above par, and I feel like that's why, you know, he ended up like getting a lot of like really high profile gigs after this, because of this movie, because it was so well done. And I feel like, you know, he got a lot of like really talented people kind of at the beginning of the like ascent of their career, like Amber Tamblyn and Naomi Watts and all sorts of other people. Adam Brody, hello. You're always lucky to get Adam Brody in your movies. But I feel like, it's a yay. It's not a slay because, you know, I still don't think, the last almost 20 years, like, I feel like it's gonna be like a footnote blockbuster wise, but like, I feel like it started a trend, and it was the best of its trend.
Yeah.
And it was well done, and even though I wasn't, like, scared shitless by it or anything, I still feel like, damn, this was, like, a really good example of, like, blockbuster horror filmmaking in the early 2000s.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, so definitely, like, it's not a slay, but it's definitely a yay. I would give it way more than an okay.
It's interesting now that I think about it, too, because, like, this came out before the OC.
Yeah, early Adam Brody.
So it would have been, like, he probably was in, like, nothing pretty much at this point.
Yeah, teen number one. Hello.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm also gonna give it a yay. I try to, I almost thought about giving it a slay, because I was like, slay is kind of like just stuff that's like timeless classic, and I kind of brought up before, when I think of 2000s, that time period, like, I think for the decade, it was like the movie, but I think because I don't think it holds up scare-wise.
Yeah, exactly.
Like Mike said, it's a beautiful movie, like, it's really well done for a blockbuster. Yeah, it's just, I feel like that yay to slay, it's kind of like, it's just something special that takes it over the goalpost there, and I don't think this necessarily has it. But I agree with everything you guys said, so, I mean, I think 3 yays is definitely good for this. So next, let's get into the budget game. I know how much it cost and how much it made, and Xylia and Mike, as always, fight to the death.
To the death.
To the death. To figure out...
You hear that? One of us is gonna die.
The loser has to watch the videotape. So...
Already seen it.
Joke's on you, we both saw it already.
So we will start with what it cost, and Xylia, we'll start with you.
I would say like $20 million.
20 million? How about you, Mike?
Honestly, I'm gonna say, obviously, because like the people that are well known in this, it was still like kind of when they were on their ascent, so they would definitely not be like A-list blockbuster material, and neither would he. I'm gonna say, I know this is a cop-out, but I'm gonna say 50 to 60 million, like that kind of area, that family, because I feel like they were given like a budget and it was a big Hollywood movie, but also they were all still relatively unknown, so I feel like they were all doing their best to work within a budget and make it look spectacular so that they would all knock it out of the park and it would make $1 million. And by $1 million, I mean like $100 million.
I was going to say a mere 50 to 60 million.
Listen, shut up. You know what I mean.
So Mike will take it. It cost $48 million to make. So a modest budget. I mean, it was like a blockbuster, movie. It was a bigger budget horror film. So let's talk about what it made. We'll start with you, Mike. What do you think it made?
I'm gonna say 190 million, sorry. Not 190. It only made $190,000. It was a flop. Flop era, 2002. The Ring.
How about you, Xylia?
I think 139 million.
All right, so for the sweep.
Oh my goodness.
Not Xylia will take it. I was going to say Xylia will take it. I'm so used to Xylia taking it. Mike will take it. So
I would like to thank the Academy. This has never happened before.
So it made $249.4 million. So this was like...
Wow, that's a lot.
A smash
That is
hit.
a lot, yeah.
Definitely made the budget back by a lot. And I mean, it spawned 2 sequels. I mean, interesting enough...
And a whole genre of movie, J-horror remakes.
A whole genre.
Yeah.
But interesting enough, like the third sequel, or the second sequel, that came out in 2017, so it's fairly
That explains
new.
why I didn't know. I knew there was a Ring 2 that came out a couple years afterwards, but like I had no idea there was a third one.
So, but I mean, it definitely made enough money to get the second one. I'm gonna guess the second one probably didn't make a lot of money, and I'm thinking the third one was probably kind of fan service, where this is kind of been, you know, the horror movie that 2000s teenagers and kids hold up as like the movie. So they just kind of revisited, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Hey, are you interested in becoming a horror hound? Then join us at www.patreon.com/itslayspodcast and check out everything we have to offer. We have cool things from podcast shoutouts to picking movies all the way to maybe getting yourself a free t-shirt. So if you're interested in joining us and becoming a horror hound, join us at patreon.com/itslayspodcast. So that is the budget game, and all that is left is for us to announce our next movie for our next week of OCTHORRORFEST. Hopefully you guys are just like us watching horror movies every day. Remember to use the hashtag OCTHORRORFEST, and we're going to make sure at the end of the month we'll pick someone that's used it and they get a giveaway. All the sweet DVDs that you'll be able to see on all our social media. So our next film, we are doing the, hailed as a horror classic, probably in like the top 5 horror films of all time, possibly. The original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which I don't think Xylia has ever seen.
I've never seen the original one, no.
So I think that is everything. As always, thank you for all the support, and we will be back next episode. This is your humble host, Rowan.
Bye, it's Xylia.
Thanks, it's Mike.
See you later.
We're going to expand our weekly video segment to take you into the back shelves of your local video store, back where it says horror videos, and where kids are devouring some awful films that we call the video nasties.
Are you freebasing? Inquiring minds want to know.
I have to break free from this culture of mechanical reproductions and the thick incrustations dying on the surface.
Fuck the prime time, bitch!
The pain, I can assure you, will be exquisite. As for our deaths, come with me and be immortal.
We have such sights to show you.
We've got to return some videotapes.